My father's laughter still echoes in my head. He looked right at me, his only daughter, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "She's just my assistant, keeps my files tidy." The room erupted in laughter. I didn't. Because the man he was bragging to, the one he was desperate to impress, was the same four-star general who had read my classified report the week before. I felt my pulse steady, not break. If my father wanted to turn me into a joke, then tonight he'd learn exactly who the punchline belonged to. My name is Tessa Gilbert, and this was the night I stopped letting silence protect him. The house smelled like smoke and nostalgia. Cigar haze curled above the old mahogany table. Bourbon glasses glinted under the yellow light, and the laughter of men who missed their prime filled every corner. The same walls that once framed my childhood now felt like they were closing in. My mother's message had been short. "Your father wants you home for dinner. It's important. General Kane will be there." That name had stopped me cold. He wasn't just another retired officer. He'd been on the oversight board of the same program I commanded in silence. If he remembered my voice from the cipher briefings, this dinner could unravel a decade of careful separation. But saying no to my father was never an option. Richard Gilbert didn't believe in refusal. Only rank, only pride, only the echo of who he used to be. When I stepped through the door, the past greeted me like a ceremony. His medals still lined the walls. His flight jacket hung beside the photo of a younger man who believed the sky belonged to him. Then he saw me and grinned loud enough for every guest to hear. "Ah, there she is! The tech support is home." Our family's assistant laughter broke out. "Ryan?" My brother added a jab, and the room erupted again. I didn't flinch. Silence had become my armor long ago. Then I caught General Kane's eyes. He wasn't laughing. His gaze dropped steady, deliberate to my wrist, where the sleeve of my shirt had slipped just enough for him to see the faint mark beneath. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. And in that instant, I knew he'd recognized it. The symbol, the code, the secret I'd carried beneath my skin. I lifted the glass to my lips, steady calm. My father kept talking, oblivious, but something inside me shifted. Tonight wouldn't end in laughter. Tonight, two worlds were about to collide, and for the first time, I wasn't the one pretending anymore. The morning before Charleston still plays in my head, the hum of servers, the cool blue light of encrypted maps crawling across the wall. I was in command headset, pressed tight eyes, fixed on the data stream, when Spectre's voice broke through. "Cipher, our east grid just spiked. What's the protocol contain? Run cipher lock on port 9. Copy that actual." The silence that followed wasn't fear. It was respect. In that room, one wrong command could crash aircraft, expose agents and lives, and my voice carried final authority. As I walked out, Spectre called after me with a grin. "Enjoy Charleston, Commander. Try not to hack your family this time." I laughed once dryly. If only he knew how accurate that sounded. On the flight home, my secure tablet blinked. Oversight rotation approved. General Albert Kane reinstated. Level Omega clearance. My pulse stopped. Kane had read my reports, every classified file, every order signed cipher actual, including Black Meridian, the mission that saved the Pacific radar grid, the one that kept Ryan's squadron alive. He never knew I was the one who'd pulled him out of death's path. As the plane descended through the Carolina clouds, I realized the truth. If Kane recognized me tonight, he'd know everything. If he stayed quiet, he was waiting for my move. So I made a decision. No hiding, no denial. Let the truth surface on its own terms. Dinner was the same performance as always, bourbon smoke, and my father's nostalgia for a world that still obeyed him. He raised his glass high. "To the Air Force. To loyalty, courage, and legacy." Kane smiled politely. I stayed silent, listening to Ryan brag about fighter training while my father basked in pride. Then the familiar sting, "My son's a pilot." A real job, none of that computer nonsense. He turned to me. "You still fixing broken laptops, Tessa?" Something like that. The laughter came easy for them. I'd long stopped reacting. Then came the punchline he loved most. "She's basically my assistant when she's home. Very organized, aren't you, honey?" More laughter. Except from Kane. I poured his bourbon, adjusting my watch. My sleeve slipped back for 3 seconds, just enough for the gold light to touch the ink beneath my skin. U-77. Kane's hand froze. His eyes locked on mine. He placed the glass down slowly, voice low but unmistakable. Cipher actual. The room went still. My father frowned, baffled. Cipher what? Kane turned tone clipped with military precision. Richard, your daughter isn't your assistant. She commands Unit 77. Every smile vanished. Ryan stared silent. My father's color drained. I stood there calm, unshaken, as the two worlds I'd lived in for years finally collided, clean, quiet, and irreversible. The air in the dining room grew thick enough to choke on. My mother's fork slipped from her hand, the metallic ring cutting through the silence. General Kane no longer looked like a guest. He stood like an officer delivering a verdict. His voice came low, controlled, every word sharp as a blade. Richard, your daughter isn't your assistant. She leads Unit 77's encryption division. She's Cipher actual. Every head turned. My father's smile froze midair. Cipher, what, Tessa? Yes, Dad. That's my call sign. Kane's tone didn't waver. Her unit stopped the radar collapse over the Pacific last year. She saved my entire carrier group. And Richard, your son's squadron, was part of those flights. Ryan went to pale, eyes wide. Wait, that encrypted voice giving us new coordinates, that was you, always was. The ticking clock suddenly sounded deafening. My father tried to laugh, but it cracked midway. She never told us. Maybe she just got lucky with some computer project. Kane's expression hardened. She didn't get lucky, Richard. She's the reason your son came home alive. The neighbor, a retired sergeant, muttered under his breath, half in awe, half in disbelief. My God, Richard, you called your CO an assistant. Kane straightened, looking at me with military respect. Commander Gilbert, it's an honor. The word commander hit like a gunshot. My father slumped into his chair, his authority evaporating in the thick, smoky air. Commander, you're a... Commander, in a way. I command data, not people, but lives depend on it. My mother's voice trembled. Tessa, why didn't you tell us? Because you wouldn't have believed me. The chandelier light flickered across my face, and for the first time, my silence felt like power, not surrender. Dad. I spent years earning a title. You turned into a punchline. Now you know what it costs to be just an assistant. He said nothing. Kane nodded once, a quiet salute. The room's hierarchy had shattered beyond repair. No one moved, but the dinner was dead. The pride, the laughter, all of it gone. Kane remained standing, voice calm but commanding. Richard, your daughter's team protects this nation's deepest systems. Without them, we'd be blind. My father struggled to find his words. She's just a kid who played with computers. I mean exactly that, Kane cut in. She outranks half this room, including me. He tried to pour more bourbon, but his hands shook. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked. The words hit like shrapnel. You made me a fool in front of my oldest friend. No, Dad. You did that yourself. Ryan's voice cracked. So all those years, when I mocked your safe job, you were the one keeping us alive? Yes. I'm sorry. And I believed him. He wasn't cruel, just trained to look away. I stood setting my glass down. I should get back to Arlington. My team's waiting. Tessa, wait. Next time, Dad, pour your own bourbon. Outside, the air was cold, sharp. My phone buzzed. Black Meridian inquiry cleared. Pentagon commends your leadership. Copy that. Standing by. Fireworks burst over the horizon, their reflection glinting off the ink on my wrist, U-77 alive in red and blue light. Driving into the quiet, I realized I hadn't humiliated him. I'd simply stopped protecting his illusion. And for the first time, peace felt heavier and far more honest than pride. No one said a word after I stepped out of that room. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing in the silence I had left for them to drown in. The night air was sharp and cold, cutting through the lingering scent of bourbon and cigar smoke. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel heavy. It felt weightless, like I'd finally taken off the armor I'd worn too long. From inside, I heard Kane's voice, steady but softened by conviction. Richard, you should be proud. You raised a commander. There was no reply. Only the scrape of a chair, the dull clink of a glass, then nothing at all. I stood on the porch for a moment longer, staring into the dark, then walked to my car. The yellow light spilling from the dining room windows stretched across the hood, like the last remnant of a world I was done belonging to. On my wrist, the ink of U-77 caught the faint blue from the dashboard glowing softly against my skin. The phone buzzed as the engine started. Spectre's name flashed on the screen. Actual, we've got a situation. Crimson Shield flagged a breach in the eastern satellite array. I shifted the car into drive. En route. I'll brief from my terminal. He chuckled quietly. You sure you're ready to dive back in? I glanced at the house shrinking in my rearview mirror. I've been ready for years. Before I pulled away, another call came. Mom. Tessa? He didn't mean it. Your father's just proud in the wrong way. I exhaled. Mom? I'm fine. Just tell him I don't need him to be proud. I just needed him to listen. Silence. Then a tremor in her voice. He's sitting there staring at your empty chair. That's a good start, I said softly and hung up. Halfway to the interstate, a new message from Spectre appeared. Black Meridian cleared. Pentagon commends your leadership. You're being recommended for the Medal of Distinguished Service. A small laugh escaped me. Irony has a sense of timing. The radio crackled with a news update about Unit 77's intervention saving multiple Air Force squadrons. I turned it off. I'd already lived that story. As I drove past the oak-lined street, the smell of cigar smoke drifted through the cracked window. Every time he mocked me, I built the silence that would destroy his pride. Revenge, I thought, isn't rage. It's the quiet sound of someone realizing their own echo. 6 months later, the hum of the tank filled the Pentagon's sub-level conference hall. 12 officials sat around the table as I led the final briefing for Crimson Shield Initiative. My voice was even deliberate. The objective is containment. We neutralize cyber threats before they become kinetic. No one interrupted. Even the seasoned generals watched closely. Kane sat at the far end, arms folded, nodding each time I finished a section. When the meeting ended, he approached, expression calm but warm. Outstanding work, Commander Gilbert. The Joint Chiefs were impressed. Thank you, sir. He studied me for a moment. Your father called me, you know. He said he doesn't know how to fix what he broke. He doesn't need to, I said. Some things are meant to stay quiet. Kane's smile held a trace of sadness. He asked if you'd ever come home again. Home? I glanced at the glass wall overlooking the city. I already am. As he walked away, my tablet buzzed an incoming email from Lieutenant Ryan Gilbert. You saved me. I owe you a drink. I typed back. You owe me respect. The drink can wait. I hit send. It felt like setting down a burden neither of us knew we carried. On my way out, the phone vibrated again. A text from my father. Hi, Commander. We're watching you on C-SPAN. Proud of you. I stopped mid-hallway, reading the words once. Then I smiled faintly and saved the message without replying. Behind me, the glass doors sealed shut with a soft hiss, the echo of my footsteps steady and unhurried. Out on the Pentagon terrace, the sun sank low over the Potomac light, scattering across the water like a digital code unraveling. I touched my wrist. The U-77 glimmered beneath the fading gold. Legacy. I whispered to myself. Built, not borrowed. The city stretched wide before me, its rhythm steady, its silence whole. For the first time, I didn't feel like a secret. I felt like part of something vast and unshakable. It was late, the kind of quiet that hummed. The servers in the Arlington Command Center whispered behind me, steady and alive. Blue light from the monitor spilled across the wall, cold and clean truth in its purest form. The phone buzzed on the desk. One new message. Dad. Hi, Commander. Mom and I watched the hearing. We're proud of you. I stared at it for a long time. Once those words would have undone me. I would have cried, maybe even believed them. Now they felt weightless, like air after a storm. I read them again, then folded the phone shut. He finally said the words I thought, but they'd arrived years too late to matter. The room dimmed around me as memory cut through his voice, sharp and cold. You'll never understand what real duty means. But I had. I carried the kind of duty he never had to face. And now, as he wrote of pride, I felt only compassion for the man who confused medals with meaning. The phone's reflection glowed against the metal table, catching the ink on my wrist, U77, the letters burning soft blue and silver. Some people wear their rank on their sleeves. I wear mine under my skin. I turned back to the screen, fingers moving again. Recognition isn't power. Clarity is. The light dimmed, leaving only the quiet. I typed one final reply. Glad you're both well. Then I powered down the monitor. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was freedom. The war was over the moment I stopped needing to win it. Monday morning came quiet and clear. I walked through the Pentagon's corridor in full uniform, the click of my boots echoing softly against marble floors. Few knew what was happening that day, a closed ceremony for those who worked in shadows where names were never spoken outside the walls. No cameras, no families, no applause. Just the quiet acknowledgement of those who served unseen. The ceremony room was small and bright, its air thick with reverence. General Kane stood at the front, a modest box in his hands. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of both authority and respect. Commander Tessa Gilbert for outstanding leadership in Operation Black Meridian and continuous service to National Defense Medal for distinguished service. He pinned the medal over my heart. The metal was cool against the fabric, the moment almost weightless. There was no applause, only a stillness so complete that it felt sacred. It was the kind of silence I understood, the kind I'd earned. When the ceremony ended, Kane approached, his tone quieter, almost fatherly. Your father was right about one thing: the Gilberts stand for honor. Thanks to you. I smiled faintly. Honor isn't what we inherit, sir. It's what we build when no one's watching. He laid a hand on my shoulder, eyes softening. I hope you'll let him know you forgave him. I already did. The moment I stopped needing an apology. He nodded once, a gesture heavy with meaning. For a moment, we both stood in silence, watching the light spill across the wall. It bounced off the metal on my chest, scattering into thousands of tiny reflections, white, clear, deliberate. They looked like data streams, lines of code truth encoded in light, the quiet held between us. That silence wasn't emptiness. It was respect, the kind reserved for soldiers who had given everything and asked for nothing in return. Kane finally stepped back, posture straightening. He saluted. Carry on, Commander. Always do, sir. I returned the salute, then turned toward the hallway. Each footstep against the stone floor was soft, certain. No longer the echo of someone proving her worth, but of someone who already knew it. As the doors opened to the wide expanse of morning light, I walked out without hesitation, leaving behind metal's ghosts and the need to be heard. What remained was the sound of purpose, steady, silent, and entirely my own. A year later, the sun melted behind the skyline, spilling gold over the Potomac. The water shimmered like living circuitry, each ripple catching the light before fading back into shadow. I sat alone on a stone bench by the river hands, tucked into the pockets of my coat. The city hummed softly behind me, its rhythm steady, familiar. On my left wrist, the U77 tattoo remained faded now, but never gone. I traced the edges with my thumb, feeling the faint ridges like cold steel under skin. It wasn't a mark of secrecy anymore. It was permanence. I thought back to that night in Charleston, the laughter, the bourbon, the yellow glow of the dining room, and my father's stunned silence when General Kane called me commander. Just 1 second in time, but it split my life clean in two. I didn't hate him anymore. I finally understood he came from a world where honor was measured by who shouted the loudest, not by who carried the weight quietly. His battlefield was noise. Mine was silence. The phone buzzed in my coat pocket, pulling me back. A message from Ryan. Hey, sis. Heading home from Nevada. Dinner's on me this time. I smiled, thumbs hovering before I typed. Only if you let me pay the tip. It was simple. A small piece but real, the kind that didn't need long conversations or apologies. Just a shared truth between siblings who finally saw each other clearly. The sky dimmed to blue-gray. Across the river, the city lights flickered on, blinking like coded beacons. Their reflections danced over the surface of the water, brushing the tattoo on my wrist with a faint glow. Some people wear their rank on their sleeves. Mine's burned into my skin and my silence. The breeze off the river caught my hair as the first stars began to appear. I breathed in slowly, the air cool and clean. Behind me, the noise of traffic and distant voices blurred into a single hum. Ahead, only the soft pulse of the water and the quiet certainty that I had nothing left to prove. If someone were watching, they'd see just another woman sitting by the river at dusk. But I knew better. That stillness wasn't absence, it was strength. It was every battle I'd fought, every word I'd chosen not to say. And as the light stretched across the water, I realized that silence, when it's earned, isn't empty. It's power quiet, steady, and entirely my own.